I'm here today in Visalia, California, at the ranch headquarters of Vinewood Farms with George Lucas, owner and breeder of quality running horses. How long have you been in the horse racing business?
Well, I was a young man when I got started. I'm 72 years old now, and I was in probably my late 20s when I got involved.
Interesting. What are your primary goals as a breeder?
Well, this is where we started. We really started out by wanting to breed quality horses. And of course, the primary goals are to have broodmares that will produce the kind of horses that you're looking for. When you talk about broodmares, you talk about a lot of different things. You talk about conformation. You talk about the key thing to conformation, of course, is soundness. And you talk about race records. And then, of course, what makes a broodmare is her production. So without production, even though she might have been a great race mare, and she might have conformation and everything else, if she can't produce, she's really not a broodmare.
Your sire is Kelly Kip. How did you get involved with Kelly Kip, and who is the thoroughbred?
Well, let me explain to you that thoroughbred influence in the quarter horse business since the days of 3 bars has been very influential. You go back and you look at most of the good horses today, and they have a tremendous amount of thoroughbred influence. As far as Kelly Kip goes, Kelly Kip is a book story about how we acquired the horse. We spent about, I would say we probably spent at least a minimum of 15 to 20 years to come up with a horse. Coming up with a horse is not a very easy a task. You go and you start looking at horses. You'll spend more money looking for a horse than you will buying a horse. Kelly Kip is very, very unusual. He was our top pick. Once we located him, it took us about 6 years to get him bought. He comes from a very successful breeder, the Hobo Farms, which is Jack Dreyfus, who established the Dreyfus Fund. Tremendously interesting man, passed away last year. He's raced homebreds about 4,400 horses, and Kelly Kip was his biggest money earner. Like I said, there's so much about the story of Kelly Kip. I'm going to try to highlight on some of the things. First of all, Kelly Kip has quarter horse conformation, and without a thoroughbred having quarter horse conformation, especially in the front end, shortness of cannon, shortness of pastern, terribly important. Of course, in our selection of Kelly Kip, it goes much farther than that. He was his accomplishments on the racetrack were phenomenal. He's a track record holder. He's a horse that stands about 15.2, which is a key thing to crossing with quarter horses. He has soundness of everywhere you look. He never run on medication. He's a horse that was very explosive. He was second high weight on the experimental handicap for 2-year-olds. He won 3 stakes as a 2-year-old. He set track record at Belmont, going 5 furlongs in his first out. But not only did he do all these other things, but he produces quarter horse conformation. And of all my years' experience, the second filly that we ran by him, the first filly was an exceptional filly. The second filly we ran by him was a filly Kip's Kitten. And she's out of one of our good Corona Cartel mares. A young mare, but a mare that showed real good ability, comes from a great family. Nevertheless, Kip's Kitten was able to run 350 yards in 17:15, which we've never had anything that ran that fast at the racetrack. She left there on the lead and just opened up as far as the rider would allow her to go. Exceptionally good quarter horse conformation. She's been bred this year to walk through fire, one sweet Jess. We're hoping that that she can reproduce the way she looks and the kind of speed that she had.
And what has Kelly Kip done for your quarter horse program?
Well, I think in every business you look for an advantage, and we feel that he gives us an advantage over other breeders because they just don't have a horse that was as fast as Kelly Kip, especially a thoroughbred horse, and has this kind of conformation and this kind of breeding. He still holds a track record at Aqueduct, and now that we run a few, and we've seen how fast they are. When you start fooling with the thoroughbred, you never know how successful you're going to be. Most of them are not successful, but we felt that Kelly Kip has already had a world record holder at, I believe it's 4.5 furlongs. So thoroughbred. So he is producing tremendous speed, and Kip's Kitten is just when you get in there with the first down dashes and the Mr. Jess Perrys and the Corona Cartels, and you can beat them the way this filly could beat them. You got to think that you're on the right track.
What makes a futurity horse?
Well, a futurity horse is something that a lot of people get confused with just a regular horse. A futurity horse is something special, and we go right back to conformation. We go to which is the key thing is soundness. If you kid yourself, if you're paying fraternities on a coat that's not sound, has pressure in his knees, just not made the way a good horse should be made, you're going to spend a lot of money and end up in a lot of trouble. I could go on in depth about futurity horses, but most of the time they come out of the real good mares and they're by good horses.
Tell us what makes a good trainer and how you choose your trainers.
Well, that's a very, very important one of the things that when it was mentioned to me a few days ago that we'd be doing this interview, I was trying to figure out what should be first and what should be second as far as the way you choose and do things in the business. And I can't put enough emphasis on a trainer. He must be devoted. He must have your interest. He must have your interest as far as the financial part of it. He must be very attentive. He must love the business and spend the same kind of hours that you spend on trying to raise these horses. He also has to be able to give you advice on whether or not you possibly have a futurity horse. If you don't have a futurity horse, he's supposed to advise you that you don't, so that you can stop making the payments and do what you need to do with that horse. There's one thing about quarter horses, there's always a good place for him. But he must be able to tell you how sound the horse is, and he must be honest in every way to you so you can run your business as a business.
And tell us about Juan Alleman, your current trainer, and what he's done for your quarter horse racing business.
Well, when you talk about Juan, I've had a wonderful experience with Juan. I had my own stable for many years where we just ran our own horses, and we had a contract trainer, and we had then we branched out. We've had various trainers, but Juan is in a league by himself. He's a high-class man. I always tell him that he's half man, half horse, and he just is so impressive about the way he goes about doing things, getting horses ready to run, how he can palpate a knee, and one doesn't need 10 veterinarians to tell you what's wrong with your horse. He goes over them every time that he does anything with them, and he gives you a report, and the report that he gives you, sometimes you might not be big enough to take, but it's always factual, and it's always truthful. And this is something that you must demand in a trainer. So we're very happy with Juan. He never fails to impress me, especially like this year. He's got the best 2-year-olds at the racetrack. He's just a very, very high-class man.
What are the stages that a horse goes through before going to the racetrack? And even when they get there, what do they have to do before they've been raced?
Well, raising a horse is very temperamental. I mean, when they're babies, you almost have to go around with a thermometer in your shirt pocket. They must be at least temped once a day to avoid any pneumonia or rhodococcus or anything you might have going on. When you talk about raising good horses, you talk about the same kind of devotion that I expect my trainer to have at the racetrack. We must have that kind of devotion at the ranch, and we must be very attentive. There's always something wrong, and if you catch it in the early stages, it can usually be taken care of. It's not the kind of business that you can put off. Like I have a lot of friends that come to me and say, well, I think I'd like to be in the horse business. I think I'll get myself a couple of brood mares. So the first thing I explain to them is that their Sundays are going to be changed when they're in the horse business, because horses don't care what day it is, whether it's Christmas Day or whatever day. They demand attention, and if they need something important to be done, you must do it to them. And of course, so many of these topics are a book length. So what I'm trying to do is touch on various things. It's like feeding. It's terribly important that you feed the right kind of feed. That you not only do you feed the horse the right kind of grain with the right kind of minerals and everything for bone development, but that you feed a real quality roughage. Whether you're feeding hay or oat hay or timothy or whatever, you've got to be very selective and have good quality feed.
Do you ever sell any of your horses?
Yes, because we have to stay in business, we sell horses, and we're always proud of the quality of horses that we've sold. We're not real big breeders, but we've sold horses like Easy Go Effort that was champion 2-year-old that made $500,000. Just to mention a few, we sold Louisiana Senator that made $500,000. Holds a track record at Remington Park going 400 yards when he won the Leo Stakes last year. This is something that a breeder, when selecting a breeder, you got to select a breeder that good horses come from. And for years, I've had my neighbor up here, Spencer Childers, was a good friend of mine. I used to visit him quite often, and we talked about breeding horses, and he did a lot of things that I couldn't always figure out. But he started off with a great mare, and he kept her daughters, and it seemed like they reproduced for him. The same caliber of gentleman as Robert Gentry from Lubbock, Texas. He's been a very good friend of mine and very close to his breeding program, and he's done some of the same things. Always come up with good horses. Always come up with big horses, and that's what quality breeding is all about. Coming up with big horses.
How are you unique as a breeder and an owner?
Well, I think that as a breeder and an owner, I try not to kid myself about horses. I don't have much tolerance with a brood mare. She better produce the kind of colts that I'm looking for, or down the road she goes. So it's all about quality. It's all about soundness. It's all about everything that you must be very demanding. And if you get too far out on a brood mare, you're talking just to prove the average mare, you're talking approximately $50,000. So you better like her. You better like her a bunch.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas.
Okay. Well, it's been a fun interview. I appreciate you taking your time and coming by here. I always try to have a lot of people that call me for information on the horses, and I always try to express my feelings in a manner that might do somebody else some good. So anyway, I thank you, and look forward to having you back at the ranch.